Welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and welcome to a video that just has me chuckling, devising this video and conceiving of it, which is a very, very early Oscar prediction video for 2026. It hasn't even been a full week since the last Oscars, but hey, I was like, you know what? Let me jump the gun here. This is going to be the last video I record in the studio because I'm getting on a plane tomorrow morning. I'm recording this Wednesday night. And you guys will see a few more videos of the studio because we pre-recorded some stuff, but I leave for my job tomorrow. So it's funny that a year from now, I'll be back in the studio, but we'll be talking about a brand new Oscar season when this one just wrapped up. But the kind of cohesive tissue there is Wicked, because we're at least going to see a lot of Wicked 2, probably at least, unless it gets Joker fully a dude. But it's going to be a really big year of Wicked. So you're going to see a lot of Wicked in these predictions. But I always love to do these just because it's fun to look back on a year from now, like looking back at last year's that I made. I mean, I had a real pain there in the cycle a little bit, but pretty much everything else kind of came out of nowhere. Even Wicked was not on my radar at the beginning of the year last year. So there is going to be a lot of fun and intrigue when we go back and look at these predictions, because a lot of them, actually, I would say most of them, are going to be really wrong. But the good news is we have some franchise films from franchises that do well at the Oscars, like Wicked, like Avatar. So at least I know I'll probably be going maybe a few categories. I'll get a few right. Maybe let's say like 10%. I want to get 10% of these nominations correct. So if I can get maybe like one in each category that I can nail, then like I'll be happy. All right. So that is going to be kind of how I go about this. We're going to start from the bottom up. Actually, you know what? Let's start with the top down, because I think to explain all the other predictions, it would be best to start with Best Picture, what I think is going to get nominated. Again, this is crazy that I'm doing this, but what is going to get nominated a year from now for Best Picture? I think it's going to be a big Paul Thomas Anderson night. I think we saw it with Christopher Nolan a year ago. We saw it with Guillermo del Toro in 2017. Sometimes there's just overdue filmmakers who've never just gotten their due at the Oscars, and this would be kind of a way to like kind of have a big celebration of that person, even if it's not their best work. Even though I think Oppenheimer is very much Christopher Nolan's best work, you know, it's still just an acknowledgement of like, okay, it's your time. Similarly to how like Spike Lee won in 2018 for Black Klansman, it's like, all right, it is your time to finally get one. And I do think it's going to do very well, one battle after another. I mean, it's got Leo in the cast, it's got Benicio del Toro and Sean Penn. It's got a pretty good cast, and I think, you know, it is one of those higher profile films from a very high profile filmmaker, and he's never won before. So even if it's not Best Picture, I still think it'll get in somewhere. You know, I think it'll maybe get a screenplay nomination, because this is the chance to finally give Paul Thomas Anderson his win. And even if it's not winning Best Picture, I'd find it hard to believe, unless it's really bad or just so offbeat, like Inherent Vice, that it wouldn't at least crack the 10. Because as we saw with Licorice Pizza, that was a little divisive. It was good, but not in a lot of people's like best of the year lists. You know, at least not at the very tippity top of the list. But it still got in. You know, it still got nominated everywhere, even though it didn't win a lot. So I'm putting that at number one. And number two is a film that I'm really excited for. It's almost like a hope diction, but it is one that, like, when I read about it, I was like, all right, this is very Oscar baity, and that's Hamnet. This is the story about Shakespeare and his wife and losing their youngest son. It's a drama. It's going to break your heart. It's Chloe Zhao, so she's coming off of Nomadland. Yes, she did Eternals in the middle there, but it's kind of her coming back to like the real art house cinema that Nomadland was. You know, this has a little bit of a higher production value because it's a period piece. So I think this is going to crack in. I mean, this could end up being like Women Talking, where it only gets like one or two other nominations, and it doesn't end up being as big a juggernaut as I think it might. But just looking at the premise, looking at the actors in it, Paul Mescal and Jesse Buckley and Emily Watson, like, I feel good that it'll at least pick up some buzz if it's very good. And I know the book is very good too. So it's one of those things that I'm already looking at as an early adapted screenplay contender as well. But next, I'm going to put After the Hunt. Luca Guadagnino doesn't have a lot of luck with the Oscars. I mean, Call Me By Your Name was his best hit. But just looking at this cast, you know, you got Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield, you know, the Io Debris, like the cast just feels so strong. This one just has a lot of buzz. And I feel like this is not as genre heavy as some of his other films that he's been doing of late. Even Queer was a little bit more experimental. Challengers just came out so early in the year, but was kind of more catered to a more wide appealing crowd. It was more of a crowd pleasing sports film than it was like this really niche artistic product. But I also think like Challengers, if it did come out late in the year, would have a better shot. So it's not like he can't just do something that's a little bit more genre skewing. But I do think this premise just sounds a little bit more of your Oscar drama than something like Suspiria, for example. But that's where I'm putting it number three. At number four, this might be a little higher than a lot of other people are predicting it right now. And not a lot of people are predicting Oscars right now, but just from looking at other sources. Deliver Me From Nowhere. This is the Bruce Springsteen biopic. I think we saw it with Bob Dylan. If there is a beloved person they're making a biopic about, I don't know. It always gets in. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody, and yes, there are some that miss, like the Aretha Franklin documentary didn't get in, the Whitney Houston documentary didn't get in, the Billie Holiday documentary didn't get in, or biopic. I keep saying documentary, but there's a common thread in that they're all black women, and for some reason, the Academy just did not embrace those films, and it's sad, and it's, I don't want to call it racist, I don't want to call it sexist, but they have a much better track record with white male musicians. Just saying. Bob Dylan, Bohemian Rhapsody, not Rocket Man, but anyway, Deliver Me from Nowhere. I think it's going to be a big Oscar vehicle. Marty Supreme already getting a lot of buzz, especially because of Timothée Chalamet. Safdie brothers have never gotten in. This is a Safdie alone without his brother, but I do think this one is already getting good buzz. It also has a Christmas release, really helpful there. That is where the Bob Dylan slot fell. Timothée Chalamet, the king of Christmas, if you will. Life of Chuck at number 6. I normally wouldn't put a horror film here. It's not even really a horror film. It's a Stephen King adaptation, but it's a little bit more than a horror. It's a little bit more skewing into like drama and dark comedy, I've heard. But alas, it did win the TIFF Audience Award. And every film that's won the TIFF Audience Award since like 2011 has gotten into Best Picture. Now, I know it's a year later, so it's obviously taken its time, but it was acquired by Neon, which makes me feel like they have the juice. They obviously came off the win with Anora. I think this is going to be the one where they put all their focus in on. And I really do think, despite it having some horror genre leanings, I mean, we saw with The Substance that doesn't matter anymore, hopefully. So I think Life of Chuck, as long as it's really, really good and it's still a crowd pleaser and they just release it right, I don't want to see what happened to Sing Sing happen to Life of Chuck. But the good news is it's Neon, it's not A24. So you could see something that happens like Sing Sing, where it was in a festival, a year later premiered, and then it just kind of fizzled out. But I think especially with Mike Flanagan, with the hive and the fan base he has behind him, I think that's going to be good for Life of Chuck. But number 7, The Way of the Wind. This might be more of a tech player, but it is Terrence Malick. Terrence Malick got in with Tree of Life. He doesn't get in a lot, but when he gets in, it's usually for his best work. So if this is one of his best works, I could see it getting in as like that more artistic piece, almost like Nickel Boys in a way. 8, I put Michael. This is another one that, like Deliver Me from Nowhere, it's a music biopic. It's about Michael Jackson. The only hesitancy I have is it coming out this year? There were big rewrites and changes because of the estate and what they were allowed to show versus not allowed to show. But I think if it is successful in being a crowd-pleasing film, look at Elvis. I think this is probably going to be along that lines, those lines. So that's where I'm putting Michael. Sentimental Value. This is the international pick. There's always an international film, and there's not a lot of international films that we know about right now that are going to happen. We know this is happening. This is from the director of The Worst Person in the World. Renate Reinsva is teaming up with him again. That film got a surprise screenplay nomination, so like that was very much kind of hitting the radar on the Oscar a little late. So I think now that he has made a name for himself in the American kind of more mainstream Oscar voting crowd, I think now he can then take the saddle and go for it with a film that, reteams with the star, gets her that nomination that she didn't get for Worst Person in the World. I could see this definitely being a player, and I don't know who's distributing it. I don't think anyone is yet, but this could also be something that Neon picks up if Life of Chuck isn't working for them, or if they just want to have two hands in the race. We've seen it before. A24 did it with The Whale and Everything Everywhere All at Once. One didn't get a Best Picture nomination, but they all won pretty much all the above-the-line categories. The Whale won Best Actor. Everything Everywhere took all the other 3. So we could see Neon do that if they are able to acquire Sentimental Value, which I think would be the best play for Neon. But at number 10, it was really a battle between Wicked and Avatar, and I just think because the sequel to Avatar got in, I just feel like this is one of those franchises that is always going to get in until they make a bad one. And I know some people out there are going to say, oh, they already made 2 bad ones. No, like, I think they're phenomenal. They are still at least very technical masterpieces. So I think unless they make a real dud, like kind of how Joker 2 was just a real dud. I think if Joker 2 was like positive and got good buzz and got good press and stuff, I think it probably would have gotten in. The only thing is, like, it wasn't good and it didn't get good press. So if Avatar Fire and Ash has like a Joker 2 moment, obviously it's not going to get in, but I think we've seen now twice it's gotten in. It's kind of the Lord of the Rings thing. Like, why wouldn't they just do it a third time? They love those movies. Whereas Wicked, we haven't seen the second half. You only have one other film to base it off of. And I could see them very much being like, it was good. It wasn't as good as part 1, but I really liked it. Almost similarly to how Dune Part 2 fared. Even though Dune Part 2 did get a lot of nominations, it didn't get as many nominations as people thought it would originally. Everyone was like, it's going to get 10 to 12 nominations. It only got 5. So I think Wicked could end up being one that underperforms if the second half is good, but not as good as the first. Or it could be like another crowd-pleasing hit where the momentum just keeps carrying on. I could see a lot of people, though, being a little bit more conservative about it and saying, well, we just saw lot of Wicked last year. It would be like releasing a Barbie sequel the year after Barbie. Are they just going to be so exhausted by Wicked? Are they going to be embracing of Wicked? But Avatar was just released a few years ago too, so maybe they're already tired of that. I don't know when it comes to franchise films. So I'm putting Wicked at 11, and I'm putting Avatar in the 10. I think there's a world where they both get in, they both don't get in, but I would be surprised if they both miss. I really do think one of them at least will get in. Then The Ballad of a Small Player, another one that's very interesting, because Edward Berger has gotten some Best Picture contenders. Arguably, his past two films were number 2 for Best Picture. We don't know for sure. We don't have the results, but All Quiet on the Western Front was seemingly the runner-up to Everything Ever All at Once. It won 4 awards at the Oscars. Conclave, probably the runner-up to Anora because it won the BAFTA. So it's really interesting to see that there is potential that Edward Berger could crack the race again. And if he does, I think he might actually get that director nomination with him. But the problem is, I don't know if it's too soon after Conclave. Maybe they're not in a rush to give him another one. I don't know. They haven't nominated him for director, so maybe it's just that his films just happen to be very good and get nominated, but they're not quite embraced by all the branches. And if this one's just okay, who's to say? Begonia, another one. Weird because Yorgos Lanthimos kind of burst on the scene with The Favorite, continued that with Poor Things, but then Kinds of Kindness was a big 180 away from Academy bait. So I don't know what Begonia is going to be for Yorgos Lanthimos. Same as like Highest to Lowest. We never know with Spike Lee. Sometimes this stuff gets in, sometimes it gets shut out. To Five Bloods kind of got some text, but not in any big categories. But then Black Klansman did a great job. You know, a lot of these films are from directors who are very hit or miss. Same as like my number 16, Jay Kelly, Noah Baumbach. You can either have Marriage Story or you can have White Noise. Die My Love is right there also. Lynn Ramsey's never cracked into the 10. It would be really cool to see it there. But I think that's going to be more of an actor player. The History of Sound, another one that I think is going to be a little bit more of an actor player, even though I've heard really good things about it from test screenings. Like Josh O'Connor's in it. Paul Mescal, it's like another LGBT romance. So that's also something to keep your eye on. 18, F1. This is one where I think it could be a big technical player. It's the same director as Top Gun Maverick. Brad Pitt's in it. I don't necessarily see it being like a Best Picture nominee, at least just from the surface. Obviously, if it's really good, it could be like Ford v Ferrari, or it could just be a really big tech player and just get some tech nominations. Maybe it's like the Baby Driver of the season, where it's like, it's not going to be a Best Picture, but like, yeah, it deserves an editing nomination. Yeah, it deserves some sound. I don't even know if Baby Driver got sound. I know it got editing nomination, but The Smashing Machine. This is the Rock movie, with the one where the Rock is doing all this, like, there's a lot of makeup on him. There's like that one still of him. I think that is an acting player. I don't necessarily know if it's a Best Picture player, kind of like the Iron Claw. This is also a Safdie brother film. It's the other Safdie brother. I just don't know. I don't know if they're going to put both Safdie brothers films in this lineup. And I think Marty Supreme just has a little bit more on its side to justify a Best Picture nomination right now. Again, it's 2025, and I'm predicting year from now, the Oscars. At 20 and 21, I'm putting both Frankenstein movies. 20 is The Bride. This is the musical that Maggie Gyllenhaal is doing. This sounds like the more interesting movie, but then 21 feels like the safer Oscar movie, which is Frankenstein, which is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein movie. So I think one is obviously backed by Netflix, which is Frankenstein. The Bride is a musical. So I think they both have things for them, but the thing against them is that they are genre films. They are a little bit more offbeat. They're not normal, traditional Oscar bait like Frankenstein. Feels like it could just be this year's Nosferatu, where we get some big tech player nominations, maybe a tech win even for like score or production design or hair and makeup. But I'm not necessarily looking at them as actual Best Picture contenders right now. Then we have No Other Choice, which is another film that is by Park Chan-wook. So if we're looking for another international option. And then I put a few Sundance films, Sorry Baby and Train Dreams. Those are the two that got acquired out of Sundance. A24 got Sorry Baby, and then Train Dreams went to Netflix. I'm not going to put films like Omaha and Plainclothes, these really great films, because they didn't get distribution. So who's to know if they're going to come out this year? And even then, they didn't make a big enough splash at Sundance for distributors to want them. I'm going to put the ones that already have distributors here. So if you're like, where's Omaha? That's kind of why. Even though I think it should be here. But I don't know. They didn't get acquired for some reason. Maybe just people are not willing to take the risk on Sundance films anymore, even though Sundance films have had a really good track record with A Real Pain, with Coda, with Past Lives. So I would try to put my backing behind a Sundance film if I was a big studio, which Netflix and A24 have. So we'll see if those pan out. And then Mickey 17, just because the Bong Joon-ho effect, if for some reason it is a big hit. I'm just hearing that it is really good, but like not a lot of people are saying it's like quite at the level of Parasite. And it's just so early in the year that I'm worried that it just won't hang on. But I'm going to put it on here as a hope diction. I haven't seen it yet. I'm probably going to see it when I get to my place of rehearsals for my new job. So I'm hoping it's really good. I'm hoping it can have that lasting power. But let's move on to director. Again, again, it's going to be kind of the same names of the same films that we've been talking about. So like Paul Thomas Anderson, if it is his year, I could see him getting in. Chloe Zhao, again, if Hamnet is a big player here. Terrence Malick makes a lot of sense if the movie gets in. He's a very well-respected director. Obviously, he's a very big auteur. Joachim Trier, we always have a international nominee in this category as well, similarly to how Jacques Audiard and Corley Farge. So I think we could see that happening. And then Luca Guadagnino, I think this is maybe also his year. He had such a big year last year. This is a big Oscar player. But you got to watch out, of course, for Edward Berger always, because he's always so close and he never gets it. One of these years he is going to. Obviously, Antoine Fuqua making a Michael Jackson biopic. If it's really, really good, he might get in. But Baz Luhrmann didn't get in for Elvis, so I'm not quite sure yet with him if he's going to get in. Then Josh Safdie. I think the movie could get in. I don't know yet if he is going to come along for the ride. That could just be something that gets some acting nominations, gets a screenplay nomination. Maybe that's where they award it. Obviously, there's only 5 director slots. There's not 10. Like Josh Safdie could be the Edward Berger of this year, where his film's really well liked. It's just he is not coming along for the ride for some reason with everything else. Mike Flanagan, Life of Chuck. I think this would be one of those, like, it's in picture but not director. Just players. It just feels that way. I just don't feel like they're ready to like say, oh, Mike Flanagan, best director nominee. Not saying there's a horror bias, because Life of Chuck I've heard is not very horror centric. But it's a little worrying. Like, I don't know if he's necessarily a prestige name amongst the director's branch yet, because he's spent so many years making films for Netflix and TV series. Maybe his next one after Life of Chuck could get in. But again, I'm just speaking hypothetically of where I think the Academy could be thinking. I think he could be an award-worthy director, obviously, but I don't know. I just don't think he's quite at the level of like Paul Thomas Anderson and Terrence Malick and these like big names like Luca Guadagnino in the Academy. And Chloe Zhao is probably the newest of those 5 names. And even then, she's won a Best Director Oscar already. So you also have Yorgos Lanthimos, you also have Spike Lee, Lynn Ramsey, James Cameron, Joseph Kosinski, all these big directors that are making all these great films. They all have justified reasons. I don't think James Cameron gets in if he didn't get in for the second one, but if the third one is just like the best ever and it is like a contender to win, then yeah, James Cameron could definitely go in if it's going to Return of the King, if you will, like Lord of the Rings. And then John M. Chu, you got to watch out. He won Critics' Choice. I just don't know. I think he's a big wild card. They could just say, wow, we didn't nominate him before. Let's nominate him now. Or they'll say, yeah, we didn't nominate him before, so we're not nominating him now. It's going to be one or the other. I don't know. I think it would be weird if he gets nominated for this one and not the first one. But that's assuming that the second one's not as good. And if it is better, if it's way better, then maybe he will come in. I don't know. Let's move on to the acting categories, because here are where we're going to see a few more titles pop up, because not every acting nominee comes from a Best Picture film. So for actress, I have Julia Roberts for After the Hunt. If it gets in a picture, Luca Guadagnino backing it. I think she comes along for the ride as well. Does she win? I don't know. But right now, she's probably the safest bet for a nomination of the names I have right now. I'm also putting Jessie Buckley for Hamnet. Just reading the synopsis, reading that book, I think she's just such a meaty role that should get her a nomination. If she is the lead, I think she's the lead. Her and Paul Mescal should both be leads. I don't know, but the Academy does weird things, as we saw with Kieran Culkin and Zoe Saldana. 4 lead actors won Oscars this year, so we'll have to see. Jessica Lange, Long Day's Journey into Night. This film has been on the back burner for years and years and years. Every single year I predict it. Finally, it's coming out. We actually have stills. We have a little bit of a teaser. We actually know it's coming out this year, and I think that is the role that she won, I believe, a Tony for on Broadway. This is a role that is a very juicy one that a lot of actresses have played this role on stage and in film. A lot of them have gotten nominated. Some of them have won Tonys and Oscars and stuff for it. So I think this is going to be a really meaty role to honor a legend in her craft, because she's kind of been out of the picture for Oscars for a while, but she is a legend. She is an Oscar winner. If she does give a great performance, this could just be a one-off where it's like, yeah, we're nominating her, and like that's the only nomination this film's getting, almost similar to like Glenn Close and The Wife. The only thing is she's not overdue. She's already won an Oscar, so I don't think she's going to win another Oscar, but it could be like that just veteran nomination that we sometimes see just pop in one of these categories. Then Renate Reinsva, I think if Sentimental Value is the international film, I think she, from The Worst Person in the World, has already made a name for herself. She was in A Different Man as well. So I think she actually has a little bit of a recognition, a recognizable name within the Academy now. So she's not really an unknown, which is going to be fun, because I think you can nominate her now, and that's really cool. Cynthia Erivo, always on the lookout. We're always on the lookout for Cynthia Erivo, because I think she's going to win Best Song. So the question is, do they want to also give her an actress nomination, especially 2 years in a row? I don't think we've ever seen an actor, let alone 2 actors, get back-to-back nominations for the same character for the same film. We've seen other actors do it for different films, like Tom Hanks with Philadelphia and Forrest Gump. Coleman Domingo just did it with Rustin and Sing Sing, and spoiler alert, he'll do it again this year. But I don't know if Cynthia Erivo for the same role is going to get that back-to-back nomination. It would have to be like the best no good deed ever. And like, there's a very good chance it's the best no good deed we'll ever see. So I do think right now she has a really good shot. So she's in my five. Jennifer Lawrence for Die My Love. I said this is probably more of an actor player than a director or picture player. So if it is an acting player, then Jennifer Lawrence could surely get in. She's been kind of out of the loop for a little while when it comes to Oscars. Rose Byrne. This is a very buzzy performance out of Sundance. If I had legs, I'd kick you. So I definitely want to have that on the radar if there is a Sundance film to pop up here. I do have Sorry Baby down at 14 as well, because I do think those Sundance films do produce sometimes really great performances. Kieran Culkin won an Oscar for Sundance performance. Emma Stone, Begonia, again, teaming up with Yorgos Lanthimos. It happened twice out of the 3 times she's teamed up with Yorgos Lanthimos that she's been nominated. She won one of those 3 times, so she could very well come along the ride here. Anne Hathaway for Mother Mary. Mother Mary is one that I considered in Best Picture, but David Lowery's never been in the Best Picture conversation. But working with Anne Hathaway, who's such a high-profile actress, and this is like a very actress-centric movie. Like, it's Mother Mary. She is the Mother Mary. I think this could be a way for David Lowery's films to get recognition at the Oscars in some way. And then Amanda Seyfried for Ann Lee. I haven't heard a lot about Ann Lee, but it is supposed to be a musical, and she's like the leading vessel of it. Same as like June Squibb, Eleanor the Great. This is going to be if like they want to just award June Squibb for her body of work. I just saw the poster or the still for that movie, Eleanor the Great. It's the one that Scarlett Johansson is directing. Again, she didn't get in for Thelma, so I don't know if she's going to get in here, but it would be really cool to give her like one last final like career nomination, because she is very old in age, and like this could be the last time to award her. But she keeps cranking out great movies, so maybe she will have 2 or 3 movies up her sleeve that could get nominated. We'll have to see. Sydney Sweeney, she's going to be playing Christy Martin in a Christy Martin biopic. That could very well happen. Margot Robbie's going to be in the new Kogonada film, A Big Bold Beautiful Journey. She's always on the radar because of Wolf of Wall Street and Barbie. She's very loved by the industry. She got nominated for Bombshell. Eva Victor, as I said, for Sorry Baby, and then Ariana Grande Botera. There is hype out there that like this is going to be Glinda's movie part 2, even though I would consider part 1 also Glinda's movie. But I do think this could be an even meatier role for Glinda. So if it is a meatier role for Glinda, maybe they're both lead, and if they're both lead, how can you resist? I think it'd be really cool to see them both against each other, not in a competition way, but more so like, look, these are 2 actresses, our 2 leads of Wicked for Good. But I also feel like they'll just resort to just making her supporting again, because that's typically what they do. But Best Actor, let's move on to it. Timothy Chalamet, I don't think he'll win. I really don't think he'll win. I think he's going to be like Leo, where he gets so many nominations, and then when he's a little older, a little bit more established in his career, I shouldn't say that because he's very well established in his career, but I feel like the Academy is going to push it off and push it off and push it off, and then finally his time's going to come. This would only be his 3rd nomination because he didn't get nominated for Beautiful Boy or the Dune films. He's only gotten the Bob Dylan and Call Me By Your Name nominations, so maybe 3rd time's the charm, but I still feel good about a nomination. I still feel like he's still well loved to get that nomination. It's just I feel like he's going to be that so close bridesmaid, quite not the bride, the bridesmaid, so close but no cigar type nominee for the rest of his career until it is finally time to award him that win. But I do have Paul Mescal for Hamnet in there. I do think that's going to be a really meaty role. He's going to cry a lot, and we saw him do that in After Sun. This is even more of a showy performance, I'm sure. Then we have Leonardo DiCaprio, who rarely misses if his film is in Best Picture if he is the lead of it. He missed for Django Unchained because he was supporting. He also missed for Killers of the Flower Moon, which is still a little weird in retrospect, especially just considering how Rustin was like on no one's radars, but Coleman Domingo still got in. I'm such a fan of his performance, so I'm so happy for Coleman Domingo, but it is a little weird still in retrospect that Leonardo DiCaprio didn't come along for the 10 nominations Killers of the Flower Moon got. But if One Battle After Another is your Best Picture winner, and Paul Thomas Anderson is like making a statement like, I'm here to win this time, I think Leo comes along this time. And then you got the 2 biopic performances. The only reason they're number 4 and 5 is because I don't know if there's room for both. And I don't know if like Jafar Jackson playing Michael Jackson is going to be controversial or that's going to be really cool for them. Also, is he going to do a good job at it? Like, who's to say? Like, we could just see it and be like, oh, like it's great. It's no Michael. But I also thought that about Bob Dylan. I was like, Timothy Chalamet is great, but he's no Bob Dylan. So maybe they don't care. Maybe they're just like, oh, he played Michael Jackson, boom, done. I mean, the actor who played it on Broadway won the Tony for it, so there's a very good chance. And then Jeremy Allen White, obviously the Bear, he's an industry darling. He hasn't been here in the Oscars, but people just love him. They love seeing him get up and making speeches. So I think for that Bruce Springsteen performance, I think he has a really good shot of probably winning, honestly. Just a matter of like, are they going to put 2 biopic performances for musicians in there? I don't know. Dwayne Johnson getting a lot of buzz for The Smashing Machine already, early buzz. I could see it happening. I don't think it's a hot take. A lot of people have been like, hot take, it's going to happen. I'm like, it's not a hot take. A lot of people have been saying this is going to happen. I just want to see the performance. I'm not convinced yet that he can give an Oscar-worthy performance because I've just never seen one. I mean, my favorite performance of his is The Game Plan and Moana, and those are just not movies that get Oscar nominations. So we'll have to see with him, but he is in the Safdie brothers film. It could be like a very Adam Sandler like thing, even though I do think Dwayne Johnson hasn't been nominated, so it could be like an Adam Sandler thing where they just shut him out altogether because they just don't take him seriously enough. I'm not sure. I don't take him seriously enough yet, so like we'll have to see. Daniel Day-Lewis is also kind of circling out there. He's like the shark from Jaws in the water. We thought he retired, but turns out he's going to be in another movie, Anemone. So yeah, that's definitely a contender for sure. Denzel Washington for highest to lowest. If Spike Lee gets into Best Picture, I think there's a really good chance Denzel Washington comes along with that film. Jesse Plemons for Begonia. I don't know how big the role is going to be. If he's the lead in the same way he was the lead of Kinds of Kindness, there's no way. But if he is an actual lead like Emma Stone in Poor Things, where he's like really front and center of a lot of it, then I think there's a good chance. Colin Farrell for The Ballad of a Small Player. This is the Edward Berger film. We'll just have to see. Time will tell. George Clooney and Jay Kelly. Again, if this is a Oscar contender, sure. But if it's white noise, if it's not like Marriage Story, then I don't see Jay Kelly getting a lot of nominations. But I do think just having George Clooney in the lead, it's going to be a great performance, I'm sure. Not Edward Norton, Ethan Hawke. I always get Ethan Hawke and Edward Norton confused because they were both up against each other for Birdman and Boyhood, and they're both their names start with an E. So I've always, since I was a kid, because I was a kid when that Oscars happened, I've always confused Ethan Hawke and Edward Norton for some reason. But Ethan Hawke, Blue Moon, teaming up with Richard Linklater again. Is it going to be an Oscar player? Hitman wasn't. So I just don't know. Boyhood seems to be the only big Oscar player that he's had. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. Tom Hiddleston, Life of Chuck. I've heard it's more of a supporting role than a lead role, but he is Chuck. So I don't know. And then John Magaro for Omaha. I would love to see this. It's just Omaha does not have distribution yet, so I don't know. Paul Mescal, History of Sound. I'm not sure if he's the lead, if Josh O'Connor's the lead. From what I've heard, he's the lead, but I think he's going to be much more in consideration for Hamnet than History of Sound. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm not even going to worry about the History of Sound. I'll just prioritize thinking about Hamnet because I think that's just the easier route for him right now. But moving on to supporting actress. Again, if Julia Roberts is a front runner for After the Hunt, we could put Iowa Debris here. She's also kind of like Jeremy Allen White, beloved because of The Bear in the industry. So if she keeps up that industry support, it could translate to the Oscars. She is someone also that I feel like her film moment is happening. It's coming. And this could be a very good way to be like, here, welcome to the big races. Come on in. Fran Drescher for Marty Supreme. I heard she was in this and I thought, you know what, that'd be a really cool nomination. I know there's other actresses in Marty Supreme. I know Gwyneth Paltrow's in it as well. So Gwyneth Paltrow very well could get in. Maybe it's a double nomination. Who's to say? Jennifer Lawrence and Kiss of the Spider-Woman. I heard a lot of good things coming out of Sundance in person for this. It didn't screen online, but it's a Bill Condon musical. Bill Condon has had pretty good success with some of his movies. Not necessarily his big franchisey ones, but like Gods and Monsters, I believe, was Bill Condon that got in there. So I think there's a world where Jennifer Lopez gets in, especially because I think a lot of people were pissed that she didn't get in for Hustlers. So this could be the chance to be like, okay, like let's nominate her this time. Same as Glenn Close. I feel like she's just so overdue that they're just going to keep nominating her if she gives a good enough performance to do it. Hillbilly Elegy was not a good enough performance to do it, and she still got in. So I think if she's great in Wake Up Dead Man, she's the highlight. The only thing is that the second one, Glass Onion, didn't get any acting nominations, so maybe they're just going to ignore it altogether. It's going to be more of an ensemble thing. But also, we have a casting category this year, so if that is a contender for casting, then maybe Glenn Close does come along. Maybe then they're like, okay, let's pay attention to the acting here. Let's nominate her. Because I think of anyone in that ensemble, just on paper, she seems the most likely for a nomination. But it also depends on what her role is. If she's the killer, that's a really good shot for her. But if she's not, if she's only like merely just a supporting player in the whole thing, maybe we'll see. Ariana Grande, got to put her at number 5 just because I think right now we actually know what her performance is probably going to be. So at least we know it's going to be good and we can go off of that. Whereas these other performances, we just have no idea. They could all be terrible. Who knows? Fran Drescher could be terrible in this. I also think it'd be really cool because Fran Drescher is the president of SAG, so it'd be really cool to see her get in. Other roles, though, I have Nia Long for Michael. I think she's playing Michael's aunt or mom. Regina Hall, One Battle After Another. Tiana Taylor for One Battle After Another. It'd be so cool if both of them got in because I think they're both overdue and so good. Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value. I thought this was an international film, so I guess she'd be speaking another language, which would be really cool. Emily Watson for Hamnet. This is one that I originally thought could be in the 5, but I just don't know if that film's going to get 3 acting nominations. I just have to see it. We'll have to find out. The Smashing Machine, again, I think this is more of a Dwayne Johnson player than an Emily Blunt player. Battle of a small player. Tilda Swinton's always on the radar somewhere. Laura Dern for Jake Kelly. And then last, I had to put Jamie Lee Curtis on there for Ella McKay. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is in the race. You got to keep your eye on her. She's probably going to get a SAG and BAFTA nomination. That's probably what's going to happen. Supporting actor. I've been on my soapbox for the last few months and said, you know what? Coleman Domingo's not going to win for Sing Sing. But you know what? He's playing Michael Jackson's dad. And if he is good in that role, then like, third time's the charm. Like, I really could see him getting nominated for Rustin, which is like the one nomination that film gets nominated for Sing Sing. It gets a few nominations, but doesn't get Best Picture. Finally, he's in a Best Picture nominee. He's a great part of the Best Picture nominee. He gets his Oscar. Oscar for Coleman. I'll start it right now. I haven't even seen the movie, but I want it to happen. Same as Andrew Garfield, though. He's so overdue, and I think this would also be a great shot, especially if After the Hunt is winning like a Best Actress win. If it gets nominated for Picture and Director with Luca Guadagnino, I'm like, oh, I also want Andrew Garfield. So I'm hoping, I mean, like, I don't know if he's supporting our lead. I'm hoping there's a world where Andrew Garfield could actually be lead so we can see Andrew Garfield and Coleman Domingo both win their Oscars this next year. That would be the best thing to come home to in the US, is to see Andrew Garfield and Coleman Domingo being there holding the statues. I mean, especially the ones I'm predicting. If it's like Julia Roberts, Io Debris, Coleman Domingo, and Andrew Garfield, like, mwah, chef's kiss. Great lineup. But right now, Andrew Garfield supposedly supporting, so it's going to have to be a battle there. Speaking of battles, Sean Penn, one battle after another. Again, if it's the Best Picture frontrunner, I'm going to put it in there. Stellan Skarsgård, probably going to be a highlight of sentimental value. He's also someone who I feel like is a little overdue for a nomination. And then someone else who's overdue for a nomination, never been nominated, but Mark Hamill. I heard a lot of people out of TIFF saying that he is the highlight of Life of Chuck. He has like a really meaty monologue, almost like a Judd Hirsch thing where he just comes in, says that monologue, and that's it. Like, that's the nomination. So if Isabella Rossellini could also do it, I mean, Mark Hamill, he's very overdue. They clearly love him because he came out and presented Best Score at the Oscars this year with like the big Star Wars anthem playing behind him. So I think it'd be really cool. Robert Pattinson, I thought he was going to be lead for Die My Love, but apparently he's going to be supporting. Same as Josh O'Connor. I thought this could have been a lead performance. It's going to be supporting. Benicio del Toro, if they go with 2 Battle After Another performances, I could see him getting in as well. Jonathan Bailey, he's going to have a probably bigger role in Wicked for Good. I mean, he's going to be in a lot of the opening stuff with Glinda. He's also going to have As Long As You're Mine, that duet. He's also going to have that like really freaky body horror transformation, if you know, you know. So I really think there's going to be a great role there for Jonathan Bailey that wasn't necessarily there for the first one. The first one, he gets that one number, and that's kind of it. He's kind of an afterthought for the rest of it. He didn't leave much of an impression for me. So I think in the second one, he's going to leave more of an impression, because I think Fiyero inherently makes a bigger impression in Act 2 than Act 1. So I think there's a really good chance Jonathan Bailey could get in this year. Adam Sandler, I really want it to happen. I want him to finally get an Oscar nomination. Maybe it's for this Noah Baumbach film, Jay Kelly, but I just can't trust that they didn't give him it for Uncut Gems. Why wouldn't they? You know, if he was going to get nominated, he would have gotten nominated for Uncut Gems. After he didn't get nominated, I'm like, you know, he's never going to get nominated because that was the role to do it. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping he gets in for Jay Kelly. Jeremy Strong, he did a really great job, you know, kind of going along with the campaign for The Apprentice alongside Sebastian Stan. He could also do the same thing for this Bruce Springsteen movie. I heard he's really, really good in it from what I've heard from people who may or may not have been on set and may have been extras and may have told me he's really good in it. Jeffrey Wright for Highest to Lowest. Again, if it's a Best Picture player, I could definitely see that happening. Way of the Wind, I don't think it's going to get a lot of other nominations except for some Tex and Terrence Malick, so I'm not predicting any acting nominations because his movies really don't get those, but Mark Rylance is in the ensemble, so that could happen. And then for fun and shits and giggles, I put both of the Frankenstein monsters, Christian Bale and Jacob Elordi, because I think that'd be really funny. But moving on really quickly, I'm just going to rattle off some of these texts. I only have 5 for each of them, but alas, original screenplay, I'm, you know, putting a couple Best Picture nominees here. After the Hunt, Marty Supreme, Sentimental Value. I also think there's a world Mother Mary could get in here, just to give David Lowery something as like, okay, come to the big leagues, David Lowery. And then Sorry Baby, where I could also see this being a kind of one-off screenplay nomination. There's always one like surprise random one-off screenplay nomination every year. I could very well see it being Sorry Baby this year. Adapted screenplay, this is where I have Hamnet. I actually think this is one where Hamnet could take it from one battle after another, at least this early. Again, we haven't seen any of these movies, so I don't know how any of them are going to be, but just on paper, based on what their books are that they are adapting, Hamnet feels like right now the contender for adapted screenplay. You also have Life of Chuck. Obviously, TIFF has a good track record of getting films into nominations, especially screenplay. I mean, we saw with American Fiction. American Fiction won Best Screenplay, so I think that bodes well for Life of Chuck. History of Sound, Way of the Wind, 2 more buzzy titles. That's kind of just where I'm at with this. I haven't read those scripts, so I have literally nothing to go off of. I've seen Sorry Baby, so I know that's going to be good. But I still don't know. I mean, it's just so early in the year. Who's to say? But we do have a new category this year, which is casting. And when I think of casting, I'm either going to think of like, okay, who's that one find, that one role, that one kind of casting that just kind of makes the whole film. And that's why I could see something like Michael getting nominated, because it's like, okay, you cast Michael Jackson. That's a big find, but it's also someone who's related to Michael Jackson. So maybe it's not as big a find as I'm hyping it up in my head, or it could just be about the ensemble. Like if you have a bunch of actors nominated, like After the Hunt or like Marty Supreme or One Battle After Another, maybe it's just for the body of actors. And that's also why I think Wake Up Dead Man has a good shot at casting, because you have to fill all these roles of all these really zany, quirky little like Clue-esque characters, these little stereotypes. So that's where I'm at for casting. I'm just kind of going for the bigger films with like Wake Up Dead Man as like the curveball thrown in there because I know it's going to be a big meaty ensemble. Moving on, animated feature. It's the two Disney titles. It's Elio and Zootopia 2. Elio's Pixar, but you know what I mean. Animal Farm, we're getting an Animal Farm adaptation this year, which is kind of cool. Wildwood, this is the new Leica film, and then Sneaks, because Sneaks sounded good. When I was reading through all the animated films, like this one seems reasonable. Sure, I'll put it in. Documentary, we actually have documentaries to go based off of here, because a lot of these premiered at Sundance. In fact, I believe most of these, if not all of these, premiered at Sundance. So I just took some of the most buzzy, well-regarded titles: The Perfect Neighbor, 2,000 Meters to Andrivka, Mr. Nobody Against Putin, Seeds, Andre is an Idiot. That's kind of just what I'm doing. I'm just picking the 5 buzziest titles out of Sundance. The only thing that scares me is that Andre is an Idiot feels very much snubbable as like that populist pick that like every year there's something that's like just very popular and very fun and like very engaging, even though it's sad. It's a sad documentary. It's got this life to it that like I could see them snubbing it because it's not like a political or like worldwide issue film. It's more about one guy and his journey and his colonoscopy, in a similar way that like they snubbed like all those celebrity documentaries like Superman and like Still, a Michael J. Fox story, or even how like they snubbed like Evelyn because it's like that one kid's story, in favor of something that's a little bit more universal and worldwide. But I still right now have it in, because I think it's great. I think it's deserving. International feature, again, we're going to get so many more titles out of Cannes Film Festival. That's going to kind of be where our eyes are at for international. But right now, Sentimental Value, I have it in picture, so I'm going to have it here. I put No Other Choice. That's the Park Chan-wook film that's coming out. All That's Left of You, Late Shift. These are just buzzy titles. And then for fun, I put Alpha because I love Julia DeCournau. And one of these years, she'll get something. So I'm going to put it there. Let's just fly through these texts just because I don't have much time left before I have to leave and go to bed and finish packing for my trip. But film editing, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, After the Hunt, Michael, I'm predicting all those for Best Picture. So there's a good chance a lot of these nominees will be Best Picture nominees. And then I threw in F1 because if this is like a race car movie, we saw good luck with Ford v Ferrari in this category. So I think the luck could be on F1 side as well, especially with like Top Gun Maverick also, I think, being in this category. They love that kind of like adrenaline in a vehicle, kind of fast-paced, scourge, pavement sound, whatever. Cinematography, that's also where I have some of these bigger, more spectacle-driven films. I have the Terrence Malick film at number 1, The Way of the Wind. That makes a lot of sense for me, especially with Tree of Life. Frankenstein, like obviously if Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is not in Best Picture, I still think there's a good chance, like Nosferatu, that it shows up in a category like cinematography. One Battle After Another, that's just where I'm like, all right, it's Best Picture, it's PTA, it's going to be well shot. F1, another one where like I feel like if the editing is recognized, I could also see the camera work in that film being recognized, though Top Gun Maverick got snubbed here, so I definitely think it's snubbable. And then, sorry, I burped. I literally burped while I'm talking. I'm so sorry about that. Hey, I'm going to keep it in because, we should be real on this thing. We should be open and honest about our imperfections. Okay, I have Sinners here too because it's, I think, the only film this year that's actually using IMAX 70 millimeter film, I think. I read somewhere like it's actually being shot with IMAX cameras for IMAX, whereas there are some films that are filmed like for IMAX, or they have partially shot parts of it that are for IMAX, whereas this one it's like filmed entirely for IMAX. So I could see that getting in. I think Sinners could be a sneaky one to get some nominations, even though because it's a horror film, again, horror bias, I'm not going to necessarily predict it for some above the line categories, but I think you could get into some text, including score, which we'll get to in a sec as well. But costume design, Wicked, easy to bet on it as a front runner. Same as like Michael. There's going to be a lot of great Michael Jackson costumes. Frankenstein's obviously going to have beautiful costumes. Mother Mary, this is one where like I've seen stills of it, so I know the costumes are going to be great. And then Hamnet, it's a period piece. Shakespeare, it's going to have great clothing. Next, production design. This is where I actually think Frankenstein could win, regardless of a Best Picture nomination. I mean, Guillermo del Toro's films have a good track record with production design. Wicked could also be in there. It probably will. I don't know if it's going to win again, just because would they want to give the same film or the same franchise the win 2 years in a row? That's where I'm a little iffy on costumes as well. But I think production design is a little bit more vulnerable. Also because I think they used all their best sets in part 1, and a lot of part 2 is going to be revisiting sets we've already seen. But Avatar, Fire and Ash, also probably likely. They're going to be creating some new worlds with that. Hamnet, again, period piece, castles, Shakespearean. Michael, you're making a lot of great sets and a lot of great stages and a lot of great performance venues. Makeup and hairstyling is a little difficult, so I put both Frankenstein films at the top because if you're transforming Jacob Elordi, you're transforming Christian Bale, you're probably going to get some recognition for that. Wicked for Good, though, probably also going to get in there. Smashing Machine, there's going to be a real transformation for Dwayne Johnson. Is it going to be as showy as some other films to get that win? I don't know, but I could also see it getting in. I think it would be a really cool nomination there, almost like Brendan Fraser in The Whale, where you're just doing a real great actor transformation. And then 28 years later, because they have some fun in this category, and like we sometimes see these like kind of one-off like franchise sequel prequel films get in, so like why not? It's for fun. Visual effects is where we see a lot of popular stuff get in, so I'm gonna put Avatar, I'm gonna put Superman, I'm putting Fantastic Four. All they have to be is good. These are their big tentpole film blockbusters this year. All they have to do is make money and be good and well liked, and I could see them getting in here, because obviously their visual effects at Marvel have been hit or miss. DC doesn't always get in here, but like for these big blockbusters that are taking place over the summer, that are these big spectacles, if they pull it off and everything looks good and they're not just glaringly bad with the green screen, then like I think they're gonna get in. We forget that Marvel did get into this category pretty much every year when it was on its hot streak. It's not until recently where they've started really missing in some of these big categories. But Fantastic Four looks like it's gonna have a lot of time and effort and care put into it. F1, another one where like I don't know how much of it's going to be practical versus visual effects like CGI, and then Mickey 17, because again I got to shoot my shot, I got to hope dick some of these, and that one feels like even if it's not necessarily a big player in some above the lines, I could definitely see with like cloning and having two Robert Pattinsons. Actually, I think there's probably more than two if I had to guess. I haven't seen it yet. Then I think that could be something that's at least worthy of a visual effects nomination. Because I'm not sure if Okja got in here. I don't think it did, but I think Okja, had we known that Bong Joon-ho would make Parasite, if Parasite had happened before Okja, I think Okja would have gotten nominated for visual effects. Because like I think Bong Joon-ho is enough to get a movie on a radar, and then you see the visual effects and you're like, yeah, no, that's got to get nominated. Then for sound, I'm gonna put F1 here because I think of all the categories, F1 has the best shot of winning. It's probably sound, it's race cars, it's high speed, sound. Avatar: Fire and Ash, another one where I feel like it just kind of picks it up as part of the bundle. Same as Wicked for Good, singing, Michael Jackson singing. This could be where a Bruce Springsteen film pops in here as well. But Frankenstein is going to be the one I put here just because I do think it's going to be at least prestige enough to kind of exceed the horror bias and at least get a few more tech nominations, including sound. But going on a score, this is going to be one where I'm going to have Johnny Greenwood finally winning his best score win, his Oscar, his coveted Oscar, his elusive Oscar, one battle after another. If it is going to get PTA that win, if this is going to be the Oppenheimer of the year where it's like we're celebrating Paul Thomas Anderson, he's finally here, we're finally awarding him, why not also celebrate Johnny Greenwood? Because he's so overdue for an Oscar. And Chad, I know you're listening to this. I know you agree. But also Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Always got to keep an eye on them. They just did the last Luca Guadagnino film. Didn't get in, but I also think, it was earlier in the year. It was more of an EDM thing. For some reason, Challengers just didn't get into this category. But I think After the Hunt, if it is much more of an Oscar push, then I think there's a good chance they get in. Alexander Desplat, I think there's a good chance he gets in for Frankenstein as well, as long as the score is great. We saw him win for Shape of Water. So I think it's like a match made in heaven there. This is where I'm going to take a little bit of a shot. I don't know this composer for The Way of the Wind. Maybe I do if I looked him up or looked them up. I don't know the gender, obviously, but Terrence Malick's film, it's going to be this kind of cerebral, beautiful art piece. So I could see the music being very, very haunting and lovely and beautiful. And then I do put Ludwig Göransson in there. I think Sinners, even if it's not an above the line contender, I think it's going to have some elements that really stand out. And just from the trailer, I really like that music. So I think there's a good chance. Moving on to original song, this is the last category I'll cover. I'm going to have to put the two Wicked songs at the top. We don't know what they are, but Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are each writing a song for this movie. I think if Cynthia Erivo's song is great, even if it's not the better one, it's still going to be the one that wins. I'm going to call it now. If I had to lock any of these down for a win right now, it's Cynthia Erivo's song in Wicked. I would be shocked right now. And I'm saying this on March 5th of 2025. I'd be shocked if a year from now, Cynthia Erivo does not have that EGOT because of the song in Wicked for Good. Wicked for Good could be absolute dog shit. If that song is even an inkling good, she's winning that Oscar. I'm just gonna say it right now because she's gonna sing it at the Oscars. They're gonna have her sing it. They're gonna have Ariana sing her song. I just would be shocked if she doesn't win that one, especially to Ariana, because I feel like even Ariana would be like, nope, Cynthia, EGOT, go, go, go. So I really think, and that's why I'm honestly a little weary about predicting her an actress, because I'm thinking, they could just give her due here and not nominate her for actress. But I don't know. Either way, she's winning an EGOT next year. I'm standing by that. My prediction, that is going to be my big bold prediction. I put $20 on it right now. It would probably pay out to like $400, $500 right now, because as the months go on, it's going to become a sure bet. I promise you that. Like I'm I'm going, I don't want to swear on anything, but like I really have this great gut feeling that Cynthia Erivo is winning that Oscar, and going to be an EGOT at this time next year. Whether it's be for this performance of the song, but I think for sure the song. But other songs we have to keep an eye on. There's going to be probably an original song from The Bride, which I also think Johnny Greenwood is also doing The Bride, so there's also a good chance he gets a score nomination for that. I didn't double predict him, obviously, but I think we got to keep our eyes on her. Diane Warren, Relentless. I don't think this is the film that she's going to get nominated for, but supposedly this is coming out this year. I don't know if it came out late last year. Maybe it got some festival stuff last year. You guys let me know in the comments. Did this movie already come out? Because if it didn't, if it's coming out this year in 2025, Diane Warren, she's going to get nominated for something. And this is right now the shortest bet. So I'm just kind of putting this slot for Diane Warren, not necessarily for this movie, Relentless, but like she will get nominated for something. And then Bruce Springsteen. If there's going to be an original Bruce Springsteen song in the Bruce Springsteen movie, I could definitely see that happening. It's not going to happen with Michael Jackson because he's dead. But Bruce Springsteen's still alive. If he writes an original song, kind of like how Elton John wrote one for Rocket Man, then like, yeah, I could see Bruce Springsteen getting in. But there we go. My voice is going because it's late. I have to pack. I have to get ready. I'm traveling. But thank you guys for this, for indulging me as I give my heinous Best Picture and all the other categories nomination predictions of 2026. I can't wait to look back on this and be wrong, even though I feel like I've done the most research for this year. Like I feel like I've really like done my research. I'm like, no, okay, like this is what's coming out. Okay, I need to put an international film in there. Like last year I was kind of just going off the cuff and being like, oh, this title's buzzy, Megalopolis. And you know what? I should have thought more about it. I'm like, this passion project is taking 10 years to fund. Like, ooh, it's a big risk. Like, I should have known Megalopolis was not going to get in. So I'm staying true to my guns. I don't think there's a film that I brought up today that is going to be an outright failure. And if it is, I'd be surprised. Like, everything I've looked at, I'm like, I feel good that they at least will be in the conversation if they come out this year. And that's the thing, too. A lot of these films probably going to come out in 2027. Who knows? Or 2026. And some of these films are going to come out earlier than we expect. And some of them are not going to get festival runs. We're going to be like, wait, what the hell? Kind of like The Fire Inside, how I was so gung-ho about that being an early contender last year, or actually 2 years ago, and being like, oh, Brian Tyree Henry's going to get in, Ryan Destiny is going to get in. That never happened. So sometimes these movies just never happen, and we just kind of have to like brush it off and move on. But all these directors also, there are pretty big names, Luca Guadagnino and Paul Thomas Anderson. You know, there's a lot of big names here, Lynn Ramsey. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good that I'll get at least one in each category. Like I feel good about the Wicked ones too. Like I feel like I'm getting that costume nomination. I feel like I'm getting that production design. Song is definitely coming along. I would bet my money on song winning. So I feel good. That's it for me. Thank you so much. Let me know what your early Oscar predictions are and what crazy predictions I made that you are completely in disagreement of, or if you're really in support of. Maybe you're like, Dylan, you nailed it. And then a year from now, I'm going to look like the coolest, most like genie psychic person ever. Maybe everyone's like, hey, look, genie right here. Maybe everyone's going to be calling me the genie in a year. And because I predicted all these awards, who knows? I will find out, but only time will tell. If I had my Glinda magic wand to see the future, I would. If I had 3 wishes, I don't know. But thank you guys so much for watching. My 3 wishes are that you like, you comment, you subscribe. There's still more coming to the channel. I'm going on a move. I'm pursuing a new career change. But hey, I'm still here. I'm still here. Brazilians, are you watching? Anyway, I've done this too long. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.